What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. So the Tory peer Baroness Altman and Labour donor John Mills appeared on last night's Newsnight programme with host Emily Maitlis. They was discussing Boris Johnson and the threat of a no-deal Brexit, which I'm sure will surprise no one, but some may be surprised by the stance each of them take. Let's check it out.
Conservative peer Baroness Altman and the entrepreneur and Labour donor John Mills, who was chair and then vice chair of Vote Leave. Nice to see you both. Ros Altman, what is this strategy to your mind?
Well, it does look as if it's a bit of a game of bluff. If the Prime Minister actually says it's 1,000,000 to 1 chance that we're going to leave without a deal, but they're threatening no deal, then they must assume that the reason to threaten it is to get a deal. Now, I don't believe that that is a sensible strategy, but it could well be the only strategy that Vote Leave and the Leave extreme leavers ever really had, because there doesn't seem to have been any considered plan for how we were going to leave the EU in an orderly fashion, other than threatening that we're going to leave and then at 1 minute to midnight.
But do you mean it starts as a bluff and it ends up being something that the majority of his party actually want, or the ERG members of his party will make happen?
I think that there is an extreme group that is forcing other people to buy into the narrative, and perhaps some of them have been led to believe that you have to sign up to this narrative, even though you know that if we actually left with no deal, it would be disastrous. And of course, lots of those who are in the cabinet have said that in the past. But the logic that they are being asked to believe is that if you sign up to no deal and the EU really believes that we are serious about leaving with no deal, then we'll get a good deal.
And perhaps that is right. I mean, we now know from the Panorama programme, I think, gave us a really interesting sight behind the scenes that Theresa May, the last PM, never really threatened no deal. She never really talked about it at all.
The point here is that if we do leave without a deal, we are going to have huge damage, and we are going to cause huge damage to the EU. There are some things that you simply cannot do to prepare against the chaos of no deal. So the idea that somehow this is a sensible way to approach serious negotiations with partners and friends that we have worked with for the last 40 years and on whom all our free trade depends seems to me to be a giant gamble, which is, number one, hugely irresponsible, and number two, fails to understand that the EU simply can't just tear up its rules, even if we want them to. So we're asking the impossible.
So we hear from the Remoaning commie spunk trumpet, Baroness Altman, who wastes no time in telling us how disastrous a no-deal Brexit will be, without a shred of evidence, since economic forecasts and economists in general often follow the political bias of the people reporting them. She has no idea what Brexit will be like. It don't matter if it's with a deal or without one. The scaremongering is what hurts the country more. Remainstream media fuckpigs and shitweasel politicians like this idiot spreading Project Fear day in, day out are the most damaging things to the UK economy right now. But we do get to the main reason this woman does not want a no-deal Brexit. She said it herself. If we leave with no deal, we will do huge damage to the EU. This woman is forgetting she is a member of the British Parliament, not the fucking EU Parliament. If she is worried about a no-deal Brexit, then give her... If the EU is worried about a no-deal Brexit, then give us a free trade deal and they don't have to worry anymore. It's in their hands. Maybot was offered a free trade deal and she turned it down, while not once even attempting to mention we will leave on no deal if they don't give us a decent Maybot was offered a free trade deal 18 months ago and she turned it down, while not once even attempting to mention that we will leave if there's not a suitable deal. She just bent over and took it from
Herr Juncker in the bunker
with no Vaseline. Like Maybot, Baroness Altman is a cretinous fuckpig. She claims all our free trade depends on the EU. Well, yes, because we are a member of the EU, which forces us to trade with who they decide. Brexit means we can make our own free trade deals, likely with better terms for both us and the other nations we trade with. The EU trade is designed to benefit the EU. We will make deals that benefit the UK first and foremost. The EU does not need to tear up its rules. We will tear their rules up for them and piss on them, as they will no longer apply to us, so we don't need them. This woman is so hung up on what the EU needs, she has no care in the world for the UK. Complete scum in my opinion. Let's move on to the next clip.
As a businessman, you don't need to be told how risky this is. You've seen what's happened to the pound just today. This is going to be catastrophic.
Well, I'm not sure it is going to be catastrophic. I think it's difficult to know exactly how difficult it's going to be. I think it partly depends on the objective circumstances. I think a lot's going to depend on the extent to which people actually are prepared to work together to mitigate the problems once we get into a no-deal position, if that's what happens.
Wait a sec, there's too much uncertainty in that one sentence, let alone in what happens. Like, when does all this planning start? When do people get used to it? And when do they come together? Do we give up on the deal and just say this is what we're doing?
Well, I think unless you're prepared to go ahead with no deal, then this ceases to be a lever to move the European Union in any direction which is going to get us towards a deal which is going to go through Parliament.
And does it scare you, no deal, or do you think it's going to be fine?
I think there are going to be some difficulties, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as all that. I've spent the last 50 or 60 years of my life trading all over the world on WTO terms. It's not that difficult. There will be changes that have to be made in short order, but I think people will get used to them. I don't think the world's going to come to an end.
A lot of your colleagues now agree with John Mills.
I don't think most of them do actually agree with him. I think they are being forced to say they do, which is quite frightening. There is
forced by who?
Well, by anyone who wants to serve in the cabinet was asked, and ministers were asked to sign up to supporting no deal.
So you think privately they're terrified?
I think they are, yes, and some have decided they can't possibly serve under those conditions. There is no democratic mandate for no deal. I do not believe that it is seriously responsible to threaten no deal or to even contemplate leaving the EU without a deal. There's no democratic mandate for it. Parliament has voted against it. The people have voted against it at every opportunity since 2016. And during
What do you mean the people have voted against it? How can they have? Nobody's voted for anything.
In 2017, the majority of people who voted in the general election voted for parties that did not support no deal. In 2018, in the local election, yes it is, in 2018, in the local elections, the majority of voters voted against having no deal. In the European elections, where it somehow suggested that the Brexit party won, actually the majority of voters voted for parties that were against no deal.
So Emily Maitlis shows her Remain bias by insinuating the Labour donor and Brexiteer knows Brexit will be a disaster, which of course he does not believe will be the case, as anyone with half a brain cell would. Saying no one knows how hard it will be because, as I have already said many times, predicting it is impossible, since any predictions elicit a reaction which then changes the outcome, making the predictions wrong. The Labour donor rightly points out if people work together and prepare, there will be minimal impact, which is common sense. The Maybot government could have made it even easier had people like Philip Hammond actually told businesses to prepare for no deal. Like any sane person, he does not believe the doom and gloom pumped out by the Remainstream media, because as a businessman, he has spent 60 years trading across the world on WTO terms. But no, the Remoaners will say WTO is bad, the Americans will buy the NHS, and we won't be able to import food and medicine. I love how he says what I keep saying, the world won't come to an end in the event of a no-deal Brexit. That's right, mate, you tell these idiots. The UK is leaving the EU, not the fucking planet. This Remoaning bitch claims the MPs are being forced to support no deal, when actually I expect they know it's the end of their political career if they don't support the democratic vote. Before going back to her usual Remoaner bullshit claiming people have voted against no deal, when obviously no vote has been held giving us the choice between a deal and no deal, claiming more people voted against no deal than for it in the last 3 elections, which is obviously complete bullshit. No deal was never on the ballot paper, and let's not forget the Tory party formed a government based on the manifesto that no deal was better than a bad deal. So I would say the vote that matters accepted that no deal is better than a bad deal, or no Brexit, as Remain parties did not win the general election in 2017 when Maybot nearly lost the majority like a complete incompetent fuckpig. She even fucking claims the Brexit Party did not win the EU elections, when they are the largest party in the EU Parliament. So never mind winning the UK's EU elections, they won the EU elections across the whole undemocratic superstate. I guess her saying the Brexit Party did not win the elections fits in with her Remona ideology perfectly, which consists of ignoring democratic votes when you lose them. Well, we all knew the Remona bullshit would get worse, but fuck me, this woman is openly lying for her back teeth. In this woman's world, the biggest party in the EU Parliament did not win the EU elections for a single nation, claiming more voters supported parties that were against no deal. Well, that would be because no party actually went for no deal, as I said. The Brexit Party has no manifesto, and the Tory party was run by lying snakes. This Tory trout will be a Lib Dem candidate at the next elections, you mark my word. She is learning 21st century democracy from Nicola Fishlip Sturgeon and Toe Swinson. Let's move on to the next clip.
How do you become so relaxed about this when you know, I mean, you've seen the figures, you know that borrowing would double to 60 billion, I think this is from the OBR, you know that unemployment would go up 5%, you know that it would push the economy into recession if you believe the Office of Budget Responsibility, an independent body. How can you be so relaxed?
Well, all these people made these sort of predictions, but they said this sort of event would occur immediately after the referendum in 2016, and it just didn't happen. The economy's done reasonably well since then.
We haven't moved.
We haven't left.
But this is what they said. This is what they said. They said if you have a vote to leave,
so
the economy
no deal
will go
will be
down.
the same as what's happened now. Then, I mean, do you really think it's going to be as simple as that?
I don't think it's going to be that simple, but I don't think it's going to be a complete disaster either. I think people will get used to what the situation is relatively quickly.
How principled do you feel about this, Ros? I mean,
I feel that this is an absolutely defining moment in our country's history. And if we pursue this no-deal strategy because we want to gamble and we want to play this giant game of poker and hope that the other side folds at the last minute, number one, it's a huge risk and I don't think it's responsible to take it. Number two, all the official figures, all the official forecasts show that it will be hugely damaging. Millions of people will lose their jobs. Small businesses will lose their livelihoods. And
would you vote
Europe.
no confidence against the government? I mean, how far will you go personally to stop this?
I think we have to do whatever we can.
You personally?
Yes, me personally and a lot of other colleagues. We will lose all our free trade. Nobody in the referendum suggested we would leave without a deal.
Will you resign the Conservative whip?
Yes, and so will many others. There is a whole group in Parliament.
Are you preparing to do that now?
Who will not stand for leaving without a deal or continuing to threaten this irresponsible nonsense about being fine if we lose all our free trade at a stroke, if we can't...
Are you preparing to bring down the government?
I don't want to bring down the government. I'm hoping that the government will recognise through the summer that this strategy is flawed, that this strategy has no democratic mandate, and that if we want to make a success of our future, then we cannot possibly contemplate throwing away 40 years of integration, putting all our small businesses at risk, losing free trade, not just with Europe, but with all the countries that we have free trade with via Europe.
Does talk like that kill the bargaining chip? Does the EU listen to that and say, okay?
I think they do. I think one of the problems about this sort of these sort of allegations is that you just weaken the negotiation position the UK's in. I think the fact that there was never a no-deal possibility or walk-away possibility right from the very beginning of the negotiations vastly strengthened the hand of the EU negotiators and has left us in a position where we've got the withdrawal agreement, which is a very, very unsatisfactory document, voted down 3 times by vast majorities in the House of Commons.
You're a Labour donor and your party seems to be now a party of Remain.
Well, I think it is. It's some risk to the Labour Party, if I may say so, because...
Do you still donate to them? Will you still donate to them if they
I'm a
become
sort of
party
tribal
of
Labour supporter, and I stay with them through thick and thin. But I do think there are big dangers for the Labour Party in becoming overtly a Remain party, because very substantial proportions...
Would you still give them money?
Yes, I will, because I think you've got to stick with the party you support, and try and change its policies if you don't think they're right, rather than just abandon it.
Okay, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
The PM's visit to Scotland.
So once again, the host's Remain bias comes out, claiming we knew this would go up and this would go down and this and that because some organisation said it, and this is now empirical fact. No, Emily, you disingenuous cumbucket. We do not know any of what you said is true. It's their prediction. They don't have a crystal ball like Mystic fucking Meg, do they, Emily? Stop talking shit and be an objective host for once in your miserable life. Calling the OBR an independent body is like calling the SNP a unionist party. It's complete nonsense. I guess you will say the Electoral Commission is an independent body, even though the Darren Grimes case proves they are far from impartial or independent. The Brexiteer rightly points out these same shitweasels at the OBR made the predictions about voting leave would cause the pound to drop and the country would go to complete shit. Guess what? It never happened. The Remoaners hate you pointing that out though. They completely ignored what he said, complaining that we have not left yet. This is what happens when ideology clouds your brain. You get a real case of selective hearing. I'm glad he shuts them down and tells them once again that they said this would occur if we voted to leave, and obviously it didn't, so why should we believe them now? Of course, when asked, the Remoaning Tory MP swings for the fence when it comes to Project Fear, claiming that millions of people will lose their jobs. Did you go to the Ian Blackford School of Facts and Figures with them ridiculous numbers, love? You really think millions of people will be out of work in the event of no deal? Small businesses will lose their livelihood because they can't fill out a customs fucking form after Brexit. I've heard it all now. This bitch just told Ian Blackford to hold her beer with the millions will be out of work claim. In the event of a no-deal Brexit, UK companies will no longer need to employ people to work for them because of reasons, I guess. Maybe Brexit means companies cannot try to make money anymore by continuing to produce the goods they currently make. She goes on to say we will lose all of our free trade, which I've already said is complete nonsense. We make new free trade deals. It's really easy. Countries do it all the time, dumbass. And as for her claim no one said during the referendum that we would leave without a deal, I would argue that no one said democracy would be ignored for 3 years, with the media and political parties openly campaigning for ignoring the 2016 referendum result because they did not like it. The fuckpigs in Parliament and the House of Lords have created this situation by ignoring democracy and hindering Brexit every step of the way. We hear the Baroness claim she will resign the Tory whip and vote against the Boris Johnson government along with others to bring it down. Well, I think the Tory party should expel all of these Conservative Party traitors right now. They are undemocratic to this nation and should be removed as an MP by their constituents. The Labour donor rightly points out that Theresa May fucked up the negotiations in a way that gave all of the power to the EU and left us with a deal that would make us the vassal state, because she never once threatened to leave on a no-deal Brexit. He points out the Labour Party he supports are in massive danger by becoming a Remain party, even though he will continue to support them and try to change their policies. Now, I don't often agree with Labour stooges, but this guy seems like one of the honest few. He is loyal to the Labour Party, which is admirable even if the party is a septic spot on the arse of humanity. He supports democracy, which is the main thing we should all care about. People can support any party they want to. I just have a problem with the undemocratic spunk trumpets like Baroness Altman, who wipe their arse with democracy and only care about the EU's interests, not the interests of the British people. So it was yet another biased panel, with a host and Tory peer versus the Labour Brexiteer, which is not something you hear very often. They spout constant Project Fear bullshit as usual, which once again a lone Brexiteer completely rubbishes. The Remoaners' lies are getting more blatant by the day now. So I'm going to end the video there, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Remember to like, subscribe and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one.